Good day. Welcome to Spotlight Books. My name is Reggie Butler. I'm your host today. We are with author Alan R. Hall, who is the author of The Naked Queen. Mr. Alan R. Hall hails from North Carolina. He's a North Carolina native. He is a theater critic of 30 years, lives in Chapel Hill for up to 40 years. Has basically associated also at one time with the Chapel Hill News, and writes essays, short stories, and poetry. Mr. Hall, if you could, basically we're talking about today The Naked Queen. This is a very, very interesting book, I want to tell you. If you could, Mr. Hall, tell us a little bit of just a little something as far as about the Naked Queen. Why you wrote it, the information, the fact that if it's a fantasy, or would you call it fantasy? Okay, go ahead. Explain The Naked Queen to us.
It's pretty much an Arthurian legend. It takes place in the time just before King Arthur becomes known as the ruler of Britain, and the reign of King Balthazar of Tabithia is the country in question. And what's going on in Tabithia is a little strange. King Balthazar is insisting on holding a monthly ritual that seems bent on destroying the maiden population. Now, this gets international attention after a while, and on the 24th month, a woman arrives in Tabithia whose name is Serenia. And she has come for the specific task of ridding Tabithia of this ritual. And she does so in full view of the court. What happens is the king insists on terrorizing the women by making them suffer the sexual attentions of the entirety of his knights. There are 12 of them. And he performs this ritual in front of the entire aghast court. And no one, of course, has been able to withstand that. No woman has been able to pass this terrible test. And Serenia comes and tells Balthazar that she will take the place of the young lady that he has chosen for this month's ritual, and she will do what he tells her to do. And she does in fact do it, and she does it with dignity and aplomb. And because she is the only person extant who's been able to pass this terrible test, he makes her his consort and his queen. And she becomes the queen of Tabithia and rules by his side for 25 years.
It's amazing. The ritual being the first night, or I think it was like the first night of the full moon, as I read, where the knights would go out and find a young lady and bring her back into the court. And Balthazar basically would condemn, I guess you would say, this young lady by falsehoods, I guess you could say, and he would then turn her over to his knights with a bed that was brought in, and she would have to basically take on 12 men, one man at a time.
He would question the maiden until she gave him responses that he could turn around and condemn her with. And then he would sentence her by decree to bear the weight of 12 knights. Now, every time, either there is no possible way that a woman could withstand that, and very few men would be called upon. So the next first night, the man who would have been next would be first this time. So the entire cycle just repeated itself for 2 years, and it's on the 24th night, the 24th month, that Serenia comes and breaks this terrible ritual.
Mm-hmm. Serenia, born of serenity. Basically, when she comes and offers herself to the queen and says to let the young lady go, I noticed that King Balthazar, which they call the Bachelor King in the novel, then hands her over to two young ladies, which are the two young ladies are lovers. Explain that portion of it. That's something that I thought was very, very interesting.
You were speaking of Alyssa and Ariadne.
Yeah.
Now, these two young women have a very strange situation. They are lovers, have been for some time. Alyssa is 26, Ariadne is 25, and they decided that they would try to live as if they were sisters so that they could share a home. And after a while, the population decided that that wasn't the true case, and there were threats made against them. I mean, we're talking about the 1100s in Scandinavia. That just wasn't done. And at the height of the threats, the king's knights happened through the village, and for sport, they decide they're going to take them to the king. So a couple of the knights grab one each and ride them off to the castle. Now, before they are brought before the king, and he is told of their tryst, for reasons unknown only to the knights decide they needed to strip them first, which is bizarre. But they are placed before the king, as it says in the book, naked as babes. And the king just looks at them and says, so you are lovers? And they nod. They're scared to death to say anything. And he says, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you members of my court. Now, this is the one thing that probably was not what the girls expected to hear. So they're almost effusive with their relief, but the king says, now don't get out of hand here. You're going to do so as you are now. If you decide you want to leave the castle, there are clothes in your closets, but as long as you're within the castle, you will remain as you are. So because they are scared to death of the population outside the king's castle, they decide they don't want to leave, so they remain nudes. That's how they become known, as the nudes.
I find Serena to be the star of the show because the way she takes on King Balthazar, or they call the Bachelor King. As you see, basically, as the Bachelor King, he's not won over too well. This doesn't seem like to be with anybody. He's looking for a wife, as I noticed. He's basically taking these young ladies and he's condemning them basically to like one of maybe what you would call one of maybe the worstest situations they could be. They're taken by 12 men. And in the end of it, it turns out that they become husband and wife and they stay together for a very long time, I guess until the end of the kingdom, if I'm not wrong, right, Mr. Hall?
Is correct, yes, sir. They spend 27 years together, to be exact. Mm-hmm. And the entire point of this ritual, although it was a bizarre way to go about it, was the king has prowess beyond that of a normal man. And because of that, no woman in the kingdom was able to withstand a night with him. And he used this ritual, as bizarre as it was, to try and find a woman who could spend the night with him and therefore become his consort. And he promised himself and the populace that if such a woman was ever found, that she would become queen. And in point of fact, that's exactly what Serena does. She comes to Tabithia, in fact, specifically to try and wipe out this ritual. And by doing so, she makes herself queen of Tabithia. Now, because she learns a terrible secret on her wedding night, she decides that something's got to be done to protect the king. It is no longer now the breaking of the ritual that's been done. Now it's her job to protect the king. The reason being is that she learns on her wedding night that the king is attacked by some sort of a metaphysical being. The only word that the 12th century populace has for it is a demon. that may be true or no, but that's the word that they have. And the queen finds it necessary to try and protect the king whenever he is attacked. She finds that she can do this best by distracting him with sex.
That is amazing.
Because this is true, because it's the only way to protect the king from these attacks, she decides that she's not going to wear any of these ridiculous clothing that are being purported for the queen to wear. She has elegant robes and all this good stuff, and she says, this is far too ridiculous to unravel. There is no point in my being in these gowns if I'm to be called upon to protect the king at any moment. I'm going to remain as I am. And she decides that she becomes the naked queen of Tabithia and becomes worldwide known for that very odd behavior.
Amazing. And the ending of the 27 years, and Darian comes to King Arthur, and he tells of the fall of the kingdom. Explain that in detail as far as when Darian shows up to King Arthur and he says that the kingdom has failed, the king is dead. Explain that situation as far as, what actually happened in detail, just as far as what, not to give too much away, because it's a great book. I don't want you to throw away your ending and everything, but as far as, in detail, after that, at that 27th year, Darian shows up at the end of it all and says the king is dead. Explain that in part as far as what in detail happened.
Okay, now, Darian is an interesting fellow. He has been raised by the nurses in the nursery at the castle. This being because, at least he's been told, that his parents died of cholera before he ever laid eyes on them. So he has been an orphan, but despite that, his parents were members of the court, and he's a member of the court. But he's only 5 years old when Serenia comes to the castle. Now, for reasons he does not understand, nobody's tried to explain it to him, she decides that she wants him to be her historian, the man who will tell the world of Serenia. This will be his job, and she starts to teach him everything about herself and the king and the castle at age 10, which is when she formally adopts him and makes him heir to the throne. Now, this makes Darian probably the most fortunate orphan ever to exist, but because he becomes her historian, he is the man who travels to see King Arthur. We hear this story as told to King Arthur by Darian. And the very first thing that Darian tells King Arthur when they meet is that the king is dead. So Darian is almost 30. The king is dead. He is supposed to become the heir apparent and rise to the throne, but he can't do it. He can't do it because he doesn't understand what the past 27 years have meant. Now, Serenia has spent her life protecting the king from this supernatural being. While she did that, she found it necessary to obtain Darian's aid to protect the king from forces within the realm. There is a faction intent upon removing the king from his throne because of First Night, most importantly, but also because they're convinced that this naked queen is a witch, and she has no business on no more business on the throne than King Balazar. So she employs Darian and the knights to protect the king from without, while she protects the king within. And it is their dual forces that finally come together at the end of 25 years to finally hold a seance with a member from the Vatican, so that they can free the king of this monster.
All right, now stop right there. I don't want you to give any more away. His book's too good. It's got a lot of detail, but it's exciting as it builds up and it goes along to tell the story of this great woman, how she came in. I got a question for you real quick because we're running out of time, but where can we find this book, and give us some detail on that and how much it costs?
Certainly. The book is published by Ex Libris. That's Xlibris, but it is available through Amazon, through Barnes & Noble. Anyone can go online and pick up a copy. And also, there are sites within the internet. If they go to alanrhall.com, they can order one there. And I'm more than happy to speak with folks when they tune in and have questions for me and start a conversation.
We will do so. We will push those people your way, and we definitely appreciate today on Spotlight Books. And we have run out of time, but it's been great talking with you about your book, and we definitely wish you great success. We've run out of time today, but once again, my guest today has been Alan R. Hall. He's author of The Naked Queen. I want you to go out and buy his book, and we appreciate you tuning in today. My name is Reggie Butler. I'm the host of the Spotlight Books. I definitely would like to see you again sometime. Come back and see us. I want to thank Mr. Alan R. Hall for joining us today. Thank you and be blessed.